Hello. My name is Emery. Welcome to Coding Australia. This project is called Memory.
So this project's pretty well known. It's a memory game. It'll start out looking a bit like this. There'll be 4 pairs that you flip over and flip back, and if they match, it keeps going. We'll go up to 16 later on. So let's start maybe with the stages. A good place to start. Very simple. Put a colour and write the word memory at the top. And script for now, I'll refer back to these, so you probably just need to, you can put that in as it is. It won't mean very much at this stage. Alright, now the tricky part is this. You need the same thing 8 times, and what we've got here, our first one is, if I take this up a bit, line up to 200. The backs are all the same. You can get that out of the library. You'll need to draw a square around it and colour it in. Same with this. The bat you can get from the library as well, and they're all named back and front, so that's important. The naming is important. The naming of the actual sprites is important as well, so no surprises to find that bat 1 and bat 2 are exactly the same, except for the names of the sprites. Alright, now you're going to be duplicating and rewriting scripts, and you may even take some of these out as you progress, because it's faster to just write a whole lot of script for one and then duplicate, or just a lot of dragging and dropping of scripts from one sprite to the other. Okay, so here's the basic script, just to make sure things are working. So each different, there's 8 of them, are in different positions. So when the green flag is clicked, the first thing that happens is they're put in their positions. So you just check those where they are, and then when you click the sprite, it turns to the front, and that's it for the moment. So just go through all these and check them, make sure they're in the right spot, and then when you run it, if you click, they just turn over. So that's to get things started. Of course, what we want them to do is go back if they don't match. So eventually you'll click one and then click another one, and if they don't match, they'll just go back to the boat, or whatever your backdrop happens to be. So that gets things started. You need to have all that set up to start with. Alright, what makes this project fairly challenging is 2 things. It's a memory game, so therefore number 1, the cards have to be put in positions randomly. So you've got to, each time you play the game, you want the cards in a different spot, otherwise there's very little point to the game. So that means you've got to randomly insert the cards at a different position. The other thing, of course, is you've got to only allowed to be flick 2 cards over, and if they're not right, they go back. So there's a couple of things that have to happen. Let's work on the position first of all, and to do that we need what's called a random generator. We generate a random set of positions, and that's what's going on over here. So let's have a quick look. First things first, you need 3 variables. Call them what you like, but if you're going to change these names, it's going to get a little bit tricky down in the middle of the script here, so I'd suggest you stick with these names for now. I, J and R. Those are counters that keep track of random positions, and what you need to do to actually generate a random set of positions is you have to generate a random number, which is what this thing here does, and then you put it in a temporary list. So down here you need 2 lists. They're not switched on at the moment. I'll switch them on just to show you how this thing works, but once you're done, all these things can be switched off. So let's just go through this. This is in your stage, and you need to have all this running before you actually even go over and look at what what happens to the actual cards themselves. So standard start, delete all of the 2 lists, set the values of your 3 variables to 0, and then because there's 8 cards, you insert a set of numbers in there, and they go up. Alright, and they're going to sit in the temporary file in order, and then they're going to be put into the random file in a random order and then put back. Okay, so you watch what happens here. So change J by 1, set R to pick random 1 to 8. So this is where the random stuff starts happening. You need a repeat until and some operators, so greater than. Greater than what? Well, greater than J is greater than 8. So if item R of the temp list, okay, so it's generated a random number, is greater than 0, then insert item R of temp at J of random. This is what this is doing, is it's replacing item R is zeroing it out. So as each of the temp values are found and put into random, it's zeroed, and that way you know, oh, I don't need that number anymore, I've got to find another one. It's not a simple matter of just, oh, randomise them and put them somewhere else. It doesn't work like that. You've got to go round and round and round and round, and eventually your temp will be empty and your random list will be full of numbers. So let's just run it. Okay, watch again. 3, 2, 5, 6, 1, 8, 4, 7. See the randoms? Goes pretty quick, but that's alright. If you watch it, when you click the green flag, the temps go in and then they're placed over here, and this is the one that you want. Now once you've got those positions, okay, or those numbers, random numbers, you use those numbers to position the cards, and that's where the next bit comes in. So I've split it up into 2 bits. Broadcast set positions just goes up here, and it looks pretty involved, but it's not really. When I get this, reset my counters, delete all of the X. Now the X and the Y are the positions of where the cards are going to go. Alright, so we insert these positions, which if you go back to your original script you'll realise are the positions that where the cards are sitting if they're not random, and they go into X and they go into Y. Alright, so those positions become the X, and you go, oh, hang on, that doesn't look random. Well, it will be though. See, at the moment that those lists, if we switch them on, you'll see what I mean. So let's switch these 2 on. There's your X and there's your Y. So you run this and they're not random yet, but these random numbers will pick up the position and go, put card number 1 in that position, put card number 4 in that position, put 6th card in that position, 5th card, 8th card, 2nd card, 3rd card, 7th card. So even though the positions aren't random, the cards will be put into the number that matches this. So the 6th card goes into that position. That's how you get it randomised. That's how the cards get put into random positions. Alright, so that's, you better stop the tape I think and just check this out and make sure you've got everything spot on here, because if it doesn't work, if this bit's not working, don't bother going to the next part. It just isn't worth it. So this is where we left off, and we're going to pick up here now. We're going to move over to the actual tiles themselves, bat, duck, butterfly, beetle, of which the two of each. Now I'll just run this again, just show you it's slightly different. I'm over here in stage. This is the scripts here, and when I run it, if you watch, you'll notice that this one now is empty. It is emptied is probably the best way to describe it, and that happens here. And there's a reason for that, because that's going to store some information temporarily again when you're flicking these tiles over. So it's used twice. Number 1 to generate a random set of numbers, and then again over here. The other thing that happens is that the I and the J are used again as well. So the I and the J at the moment are used to help generate these random numbers, but then they're going to be used, you'll notice they appear again and they have a different function. So all these variables have been set for all of the sprites, not just for a specific sprite or backdrop or something like that. So you need these. If they're not in there already, you've got to put those in at the top. You do your insertions, delete all of X, insert, delete all of Y, insert, set I to 1, very important, and then broadcast put positions. Now put positions, as the name suggests, is exactly what's going to happen. It's going to put the tiles in a random position on the screen. So make sure that part's right. Now let's go and look at one of the bats. I'll switch these off because they're only going to be in the way. Alright, we can leave those sitting there, but they can be switched off later. Let's go and look at one of the sprites. Here's bat 1. Okay, now first things first, when I receive put positions, I'll just slide this down a little bit. It looks pretty overwhelming. The thing is, the part that's probably tricky is if you get this right, when you get this right, you then would drag all that onto the next one and make changes. It's probably quicker or easier to drag that sprite, which is bat 1, onto bat 2 first, because the changes aren't quite so severe. Alright, so let's just have a look. First things first, we're not up to clicking the sprite, but you can see what's involved here. When you click the sprite, it turns over. Is it the first one that's been turned over? Is it the second one that's been turned over? So here's your eye being acting like a switch. So if it has or hasn't, so that's the sort of stuff you're dealing with here. Did one get turned over? Did two get turned over? Not only that, did they match? If they don't, flick them back. If they do, then just hide them or leave them flicked over. We're hiding them, so they just disappear. So as each pair are matched, they just are hidden, which is why that show is fairly important. Okay, so this is the bit of script that is the most important. So just have a bit of a look at what's going on here. You've got to you need to use the random numbers that were generated in the random list. So it says item 1 of random, which could be 6, of X. So it's picking up for the first, it's picking up the position of X according to the random list, and it does the same for Y. So that there is pretty important. In fact, it won't work unless that's absolutely spot on. Now, so that's your position putting. Switch the costume to the back and show the costume because it may have been hidden from a previous game. So that's the first part. The second part, same thing. When this sprite's click, go there, okay, and then we've got a bit of action here. We've got a great big if statement around the outside. We've got another if statement nesting inside that one, and we've got an if else in here. Okay, so first of all, if I is 1 or I is 2, then if costume equals 1. If costume equals 1, then switch to front. So if everything's true, it'll flick. Wait a minute, insert bat at 1 of temp. So remember we said the temp file gets used to store temporarily what's just been picked. Change I by 1. If the item 1 of temp is equal to the item 2 of temp, then broadcast bat. And over here it says delete all of temp and hide. What that means is that you've put both bats into temp because those were the ones that were picked, and because they match, so there's only 2 things going into temp at any one time. Alright, so when you receive it, so temp just becomes empty. I mean, you could create another two item list if you want, but the temp one's not being used at the moment, so we just use it again. Broadcast bat. Else, if it isn't, then broadcast reset, and what that does is it flicks it back over. So it hasn't matched, so it flicks back and you just try another 2. So that's what all this does. Have a good close study of this, pull it apart, see that one and all that and that. That's what it all looks like. So that all goes inside there and that all goes inside there, and you then, that's what the script looks like. Now let's move to the second one, which is the duck. and see if you can see what's different, because they're all the same. So you drag all that on top of duck and you'll go, aha, item 2. So duck 1 is item 2, item 2, item 2. Insert duck, 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 reset. Okay, so the bits that are different, there's not a lot that's different, but insert duck and your broadcast becomes a duck broadcast. Okay, so there's a whole lot of broadcasts. See, bat, beat, butt, duck, and a few other bits and pieces as well. So that's, these broadcasts are important. You don't want to go broadcasting off to somewhere else. So the duck broadcast is what's controlling the duck. Let's look at the butterfly. 3, 3, 3, 3, I1, I2, costume 1. The bits that change, insert butt, which is butterfly, dut, but. So as long as you get the first one right and drag and drop correctly and make the changes, there's a fair bit of code, but you can save yourself a lot of work by getting the first one right and then just dragging, dropping and changing. Here's Beetle 1. Same thing again. Just some changes. Beat, beat. Insert beat at I of temp. So temp's being used to keep the 2 beats in there. If they're right, they're in. They'll disappear. If not, they'll be just switch back. Okay, so that's 3. Now bat 2. Let's have a look. Like I said, if you drag bat 1 over onto bat 2, you'll discover that there's a few less changes that need to be made, because all this is exactly the same. The only bit that's different is item 555. So bat 1 is item 111. Bat 2 is item 555. Otherwise the codes are the same. So once you get duck right, save yourself a bit of bother, drag it over onto duck 2 and go 6, 6, 6, 6. And then when you've got butterfly 1 right, drag that over onto butterfly 2, 7, 7, 7, 7, and similar for beetle, and beetle 8, 8, 8, 8. Okay, so that's it. Let's just see what this thing looks like when you run it. Alright, so looking good. There we go, the green flag. So just click them and they work. Good. Alright, so now what we're going to do is, at the moment when you run the game, when it's over, you just keep clicking the green flag and the game starts up again. So this time what we'll do is implement a little feature that's fairly popular, where you press something and the game starts again. There's a little bit of checking you've got to do too, otherwise it just, when you start pressing keys like space bars and stuff, if you don't check that you're actually allowed to press the space bar, things can go fairly awry. So first things first, if you can just duplicate your backdrop, and in the second backdrop just type that in your second backdrop. This one we've called brown, this one we've called brown 2. Okay, so you've got that one and that one. Now what does that do? Well, the scripts that are already in the backdrop are down here and they haven't changed. So you've got, well, hang on, that's not quite right. You've got your set positions, all that you should have already, except for that little one there, which is R, is now going to be used, and the R is like a counter that's going to check to see if everything's been matched, and if it has, then it'll ask you to press the space bar for another turn. So that's what R is going to do, and it's set there. It's used elsewhere, as you know, up here in the random stuff, but once that's all been done, it gets used again. Now, a couple of small modifications here at the top. When this is clicked, you set R to 0, you switch it to brown, and you broadcast again. This was connected before, now they're separate. There's a reason for that, because it's going to come back to here and go through all this again to play another game. So you separate these. So at the outset this happens, but each time you do that. Now up here, the space bar, you know, to get the space bar, when it's pressed, this is a little if statement you need. If R equals 4, then switch backdrop to brown, and when I receive done, which is going to show up elsewhere as well in the scripts, done, as it suggests, means yes, I've done my matching, my 4 sets of 2 have matched, I'm ready for another game. So when I receive done, if R equals 4, then switch backdrop to brown 2. Alright? Okay. So that's what's going on in there. Alright, now let's just go over and pick one of the tiles. This is exactly the same. This is exactly the same. Almost. Over here, you've got this. Okay? Is different. This is where your R is being incremented by half. So if you think about it, it's going to increment each time there is a match. So the bat goes in, the bat goes in, it goes up, R goes up and R goes up, so it becomes 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and then you're back. So that's the next bit you need to do. Just put that bit there in, and you've got to do it for all of them obviously. So yes, it's a bit repetitive, tricky to know when to. Everything else shouldn't have changed except for this bit here. Alright, and we'll just see how we go here. R's gone to 1. Two, 3, 4. Press spacebar for another turn, which I will, and away you go. Memory games usually involve how many guesses it takes to actually match all the pairs up. So what we need is a new variable. So there's a variable called guesses, which is just dragged up and sitting over there at the moment. So if you can create a variable called guesses, put it up there, and we may as well do everything right now. So we turn it into a large readout, and we're going to put it in the second backdrop. Now the second backdrop at the moment has press spacebar, so if you stamp this, it'll give you another one, drag it up to there, retype in what it says there, and see the little space. That's where this is going. Your guess is probably 0 at the moment. I've just been running through this to make sure it's okay. So this will appear. Now the scripts go like this. First thing you need to do is you've hit the space bar, you've come back for another turn, you've done a whole heap of stuff. Before you head off to guesses, you need to set the guesses to 0 and hide the variable guesses as well. It's in there, but since it's not featuring anywhere else in this project, it might hang around a few seconds after you start refreshing things. So let's put it up here in there. Okay, doesn't matter where it is as long as it works. So the guesses will be set to 0 and it will be hidden. Okay, but when the game is done, it will show. Alright, so you drag to the right spot and it will show. It will flick to backdrop brown and it will show. So let's just see what we've got here. The R can be hidden too, by the way. Congratulations, you took 7 guesses. So there you have it. So this is the last video in this series with memory, and there's a fair bit going on here. A lot of it's duplication though. For example, down here we're going to 4x4, which is 16. So that's 8 pairs that we'll be comparing instead of 4 pairs. So a lot more comparing. However, if you look at the script for say bat, it hasn't changed by much. It's pretty much the same. Okay, there is no difference there. So the guesses is in there the way it's supposed to be, and the first 8 are as they should be. So there's number 8. So to get more pictures, it's really just a matter of, okay, well, I'll go to cat and I'll have a cat one, and my script will become number 9, and everything else will be put position, etc, etc. And the thing that I need to change is that I insert cat at temp, and or whatever name you get cut, and then you need to broadcast a cat instead, and that one is compared to this one. So they're essentially the same, except it's item 13 here. And then so cat is 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So essentially, apart from the new broadcast dove for dove, or whatever you decide to pick for your pictures, this one's a dove, then that doesn't change by much. But where the action really starts to pick up a bit is over here in the backdrop. So because you've gone to 16, your R is no longer 4, it is 8. Your random is 1 to 16, not 1 to 8. Your J is 16. So you actually, if you want to flick things on and test it, you can, just to make sure that the 16 random numbers being generated here. Okay, so that's pretty much the same. You hide the guess, you show the guess appears where it's supposed to be, how many guesses it took. But here's where I made quite a few changes, because the positions used to be just a whole list of inserts, and because I and J are used over here as randoms, they can be used in this little stretch here as well before they get picked up by them. So the variables, even though there's not many, they can be used more than once, which is handy. And this is where the action takes place, and these are positioning the X and Y positions by using a couple of loops. And if you have a look, the I and the J go up by certain amounts and down by certain amounts, so you get across the top, and then the next row, then the next row, then the next row. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So just have a good look at this to get your position set up correct, and that will then allow you to go to put positions, which is where the actual tiles will sit. So let's give it a run and see how it looks. Congratulations, you took 16 guesses. And there you have it. So just go through these, each one, duplicate, change, and spend a bit of time checking out this part here as well. Make sure it works correctly.
Thank you, too.